All right, for the next item of business, let's just get into it. I've been teasing it throughout this entire show. We knew that week 14 was going to have a big impact on the NFL MVP race. And lo and behold, we were right. So let's get into it. A week of some significance for the race to the MVP. And where better to start than Dak Prescott? We said all week the winner of this game between the Cowboys and Eagles would very likely see their quarterback, the MVP frontrunner by the end of the game. Turned out to be completely true. Who could have seen that coming? Two of the biggest, most visible teams in the league with the best records. Dak Prescott, not even his gaudiest performance, 62% of his passes, 271 yards and 2 touchdowns. As Ralph mentioned earlier, first half, it looked like it was going to be this big statement game. I would simply call it an efficient game. But look, you lead your offense to 33 points and the Cowboys run the Eagles out of Texas. It's plenty good enough to bump you up. And yes, Dak Prescott currently the betting favorite to win NFL MVP. The fun thing about this is these opportunities keep coming up week after week. It'll be Josh Allen next week. It'll be Tua and the Dolphins the week after that. Dak Prescott hasn't clinched anything, certainly not with a month still to play. But when you put up 30 points, when you win a statement opportunity game like this is what happens. It is completely unsurprising that Dak is the front runner right now, just mathematically from a betting standpoint. And if the Cowboys keep up this pace, if they win, what, 3 of these last 4? Yeah, I think I'd go as far as to say you can lock that thing up for Dak Prescott. Although there is one guy that's going to have a lot to say with that, I think, and that is the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. Brock Purdy comes in right behind Dak in betting odds, just slightly behind him. He sets a career high in passing yards against Seattle, 368. Did have the interception to go with the 2 touchdowns, but just continuing to distribute the ball at a high level. This is the most polarizing topic of the NFL season, I think, is Brock Purdy's MVP candidacy. How much of it is Purdy? How much of it is the talent around him? I wanted to drill down on this, and who better to talk to than the guys that have actually watched the last 2 of his games. Kevin Burkhardt, Greg Olson called the Niners win against Philadelphia last week, in addition to San Francisco's win against Seattle on Sunday. And guys, I'll just ask you straight out. How legitimate do you think Brock Purdy is as an NFL MVP candidate?
Yeah, I think it's 100% legitimate. I think right now, look, we've talked about this at dinner, it changes every week, but Brock Purdy and Dak Prescott, neck and neck. I think Brock Purdy's biggest issue for an MVP might be his own teammate.
Yeah, and I think that's what goes against him. It almost cancels some of what he does out, fair or unfair. And listen, I don't know, and we talked about it on the broadcast, I don't know if we've had a quarterback at the top of so many different categories, winning, being number 1 over his time as a starter, and be not considered in that top upper echelon. Every other year where there's been a quarterback on arguably the best team in the league who happens to also lead in every major quarterback category to not be MVP is kind of unprecedented.
Yeah, he's been great. I think he's right there, Dave, to answer your question.
And I think he's going to stay in that mix as long as the Niners are on top, which certainly feels like it's going to be the case from here on out. I'm running out of words for the Niners, but dominant feels like it fits every week, guys. I appreciate the time.
Always, Dave. See you next week.
Thanks, Dave.
It might not be fair. It might not be right, but let's just get down to brass tacks. I do think there is one compelling element of this conversation to keep in mind with Dak and Brock Purdy, and that's typically voters award wins. Maybe wins are not a quarterback stat, but the last several MVPs, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, going all the way back, the last time a quarterback won MVP without being the number 1 seed, that would be 2016, Matt Ryan. He was the number 2 seed for that Falcons team that wound up making the Super Bowl. Before that, you got to go all the way to Peyton Manning in 2008. He was the 5 seed at 12-4 for the Colts. That was the last time a guy who wasn't at least a 1 or 2 seed, quarterback, mind you, won NFL MVP. I like KB's point that, there's a lot of guys taking credit, taking publicity, getting stats on this 49ers offense. But for right or for wrong, this has become a quarterback award. And I do think it's worth pointing out we have very recent data that shows what the 49ers are with different quarterbacks. And it's never looked quite this amazing. I don't officially know where I fall on it, but if the Niners keep this up and get the 1 seed, get the bye, I at the very least think you should be prepping yourself for that possibility. Brock Purdy continuing to play lights out. Meanwhile, up next, there is still a month left, but as good as you feel about Dak and Brock Purdy's chances, it's hard to feel good about where Jalen Hurts stands after this loss to the Cowboys. His second straight loss by 3 possessions. They lose big to the 49ers as well as Dallas. This was Jalen Hurts' first game without a touchdown this season. He also had one of Philly's 3 fumbles. That's 15 turnovers on the season. So you combine, I mean, I think people have said this before, like wins for right or wrong mean a lot to this award, and wins were the thing that was going for Jalen Hurts. The number one factor was that they were finding ways to win games, and they were sitting on top of the entire NFL over these last 2 weeks. It's no longer the case. San Francisco, Dallas, Baltimore, all sitting on 10 wins. Doesn't look like it means quite as much as it used to when you add in the turnovers. And consider it's nice that the Eagles have an easy stretch on their schedule coming up. Doesn't do a whole lot to sway MVP voters when you're beating up on the New York Giants and the Arizona Cardinals. Something to consider. I did mention the 10-win Baltimore Ravens, and I do think Jalen Hurts' slip reopens the door for Lamar Jackson. If you'll remember, he was actually our midseason MVP here on the NFL on Fox podcast, as voted by y'all. You, if you're listening to this, you chose Lamar as the MVP at the midpoint of the season. I feel like people have kind of forgotten about him. You know, the Ravens had a couple silly losses. Be honest, the stats haven't been gaudy. Lamar Jackson only had 9 touchdown passes at midseason, but a game like this against the Rams sure can put you back on the map. Lamar Jackson accounted for 386 yards, 3 touchdowns in the win against the Rams. And like I said earlier, we're all going to remember the Tylan Wallace punt return for a long time. But in regulation, it was Lamar Jackson that led the Ravens on a game-tying drive at the end of the game. Last minute of the game, he leads them 75 yards, throws an absolute laser beam to Zay Flowers. 21-yard touchdown pass, 3rd and 17. Looked like a rough situation for the Ravens. Gets the touchdown. One of Lamar Jackson's best games of the season, and his better games were in laughers. You know, okay, cool. You put up big stats against the Lions and the Seahawks when the backups were in the fourth quarter. But what do you do when it's nut cutting time in a close game? That is what Lamar Jackson does. And right now, we'll see what happens with the Dolphins, but the Ravens sitting right there at the top of the AFC. I think it is time to remember Lamar Jackson, very, very much part of the NFL MVP conversation. Let's wrap this up. Just mentioned the Miami Dolphins. They play tonight. We don't yet know what they're going to do, but it's worth mentioning Tyreek Hill. You know, the guy is on an absolute tear. We've talked about it. 405 yards and 4 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks. They play the Titans on Monday Night Football. I know there's 2 Monday Night Football games, but this is still nationally televised. Everybody's going to see what Tyreek Hill does here. If he blows up again, I'm not giving gambling advice, but I see those are nice looking odds for Tyreek Hill. Maybe you hop on that early, because if he goes off again, we've already talked about it. This is a year where nobody's truly seizing control of the award the way that we've seen Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers do in recent years. If Tyreek Hill plays 2 or 3 more games like what we've seen in the last 3 weeks, it's going to be an interesting conversation. I guess that's all I can say. I do feel like I have to see it to believe it, but 2,000 yards is 2,000 yards, and he is going to be in the conversation if he keeps up this pace.